This thing has me very red today. I promise I'm not that sunburnt. How's everybody's Thursday going?
Just really starting.
Get some people added here to the list and then we'll kick this thing off. How's it going today, Mike?
Pretty good. Derek, Brian, long time no see.
It's forever, man.
Is this right
We
after our
just
Grand
got
D
off the
meeting?
container decall. Yep, you got it.
Let's see. Yep, I am sharing the right screen here. I didn't throw too much on the agenda. We can deviate from some of this if folks want to. But a few things have popped up this week. Couple are pretty quick. But we're going to need someone. Well, Sajay is here. So we can knock, I think, a couple of these out. Just a review needed on this one. So it's just a broken link. Instead of going to applying, it needs to go to applying change sets. And if you look at image layout, pull that one up. Show you where this one is. Super simple review. And applying. So this one up here goes to applying. That does not work because the actual link way down at the bottom, or should be applying change sets with the dash and change sets. So that's a little simple link fix there. Hopefully that's an easy review and folks are good with that. I won't spend much time on that one. There was another one for the Docker auth reference. This one needs someone that's over. Hey, Mike, you're on that list. Someone over in the working group for auth to go in there and just approve a fix of a link out there. So Docker moved some stuff over on their side, so we're just updating the link to correct that entry. Those are easy reviews. Nothing exciting there. The next one here might be a little bit more exciting. I changed a bunch of stuff around on the Pandoc side. And I did that because if we go into our releases, the release files that we have over here, yeah, I could save that and do whatever we're going to do with that. If I open one of those up, let me pull that on my local machine and open that up and kind of show folks what I'm looking at. Of course, my machine rebooted shortly before this meeting, so all my windows are out of order here. Was that image spec? Yeah, that image spec. And I will open up the copy that I've got from when we built this earlier. From here, all of these links are going to 404. Everything in here is just going to 404. And it's because the Pandoc didn't keep track that we were doing internal links between different files and that we were merging all these files together, and that should have links to different points within the spec and not different parts of the different files in the same directory. So there are some corrections there for making that work. I battled a lot with Pandoc because I didn't realize that there was a bug, which they said, yeah, of course, it's a regression. We know there's a regression, but yeah, they're at least going to look at how they can fix that. Essentially, the most latest and greatest release of Pandoc doesn't let you link from file 1 to file 2 for the file name. If you went to a header within file 2, it would link just fine, but you can't link to just file 2. So they're working on that. Hopefully that'll get fixed. Over here in this one, though, a bunch of the stuff that changed. I went to the 3.1 release, and that was the one where they fixed the bug originally and then before the regression kicked in. So I kind of picked a release in the middle of those two. Change this stuff around a little bit just to make the command lines easier below. Nothing too ridiculous. But because I did that, I was able to get rid of some of the pandoc source, pandoc destination, a couple of these other variables, and it just, a lot of things are just transparent the way it got rewritten. Small fix there, instead of just the PDF, it can be PDF, it can be HTML, all those things. If you don't have Docker or Pandoc installed, it's going to give you an error. And then I tweaked around a whole bunch of the arguments to make this all build into a self-contained HTML file. So one single HTML file, no external links to anything, unless it's a link to a whole different HTTP, whatever website outside of our spec. But all of the pictures, all of the links to the other files, they all work in this new setup. So it's just kind of a rework of that. And I might have changed like some argument orders or some other stuff, the version I put in there. Changed a couple of things like that just to make these two commands easier to compare to each other. Basically, the whole beginning of the command just lines up with the exception of LaTeX versus HTML. And then there are a couple of specific things to the HTML version versus the LaTeX version. And let's see, anything else in there? I got rid of the header.html. I just switched to a little simple script in there. So we had a script that was making a file with a couple lines in there and did some fancy smancy templating and whatnot. I got rid of all that and said just output the version. That was all I needed with this. And then I just put the version directly in what we were using. So pull the version out, dump that in the title, done. Kept it super simple. So yeah, any questions on what on earth is going on in this thing? Because it's a lot going on there. I was blabbering on a lot, so feel free to interject. I'll give you another example. Even the PDF versions, if you go to that, all these links are broken as well. They all fail. Where one more thing, after I fixed it, this will even work on our development releases. Before, this wouldn't work on the development release. You had to have a tagged release for any of this stuff to work. So that was another thing that got fixed in there. Y'all are quiet. You don't want to talk about documentation, huh? All right.
Yeah, TNN already commented on the PR.
On the docs one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good with that kind of stuff as well. So good suggestions. He's not even here today, and he's commenting.
Isn't that coincidental?
He's almost always here. I was kind of surprised not to see him here.
I know. Or he's just listening. He might be on a call only, maybe.
He might have a conflict and just miss us so much that you had to like jump in and interject anyway. All right. Let's see. The other stuff that we got going on here. I think this is the next one on the list here. Yeah, there was some comments about, hey, what about alternative to the linear one layer lines, which that phrase didn't make sense to me, but I think they were saying they wanted a tree-like structure to how layers were done. And that didn't parse so well in my brain, but it sounded like Cypher at least had a decent idea of what he was asking about, and then it kind of went from there different directions. So wanted to make people aware of this discussion and chime in.
Aware of the discussion that's been going on for 6 to 7 years.
I hadn't seen all the previous discussions, so go ahead and chime in. Where is it just
Oh,
impossible?
Cypher links to it also.
What's that?
I mean, it's just an ongoing thing, but
Well, I've seen discussions on can we get rid of tar? That one felt old, but the nonlinear, they wanted to have some kind of structure in there where like a tree-like layer structure, I'm not even sure I understand what the request is because there are two ways to parse that.
I mean, that's part of what the proposal is around the moving away from tar, is having those manifests, tree manifests essentially. There's a lot of different ideas around it, but
So if you had a tree of layers, does this mean that you can merge multiple different images together? Does it mean that when someone does a build command and I change one file in one step, I make a branch for that one step, but if I change two different directories in the file system, I now have two different layers I get added for different branches of the file system? Like, what do they mean by the tree and multiple roots?
I assume tree here usually refers to you have your metadata tree separated from your data tree, and the tree can get updated. And you can version the tree, but the underlying content hashes are might have a very small diff.
So you're saying multiple layer roots in the same image. Or multiple root layer tree. Is that the same thing you're talking about, or am I correct that we're parsing this in two completely different ways?
I didn't read this whole discussion. I didn't quite understand what a multiple root
Okay, good. Because
layer
that was
tree
my
is.
response too.
Okay. I mean, I assume that they're talking about wait, why you must only have one layer lines. Okay, yeah. I'm not sure, but I saw where the discussion went.
Yeah,
Which is
Cypher took it into his whole, we hate tar, we want to replace tar. And I completely understand Cypher's comments there. Makes a lot of sense to me. There are issues that we want to work on. But when I'm reading the original question, I'm like, is this person asking why we can't merge the Alpine image along with the Debian image to make a combined super image of all the tools we want to put together? Because that's a common question people are asking. Why can't I take the Docker image and the Jenkins image, put them together? Now I have Docker and Jenkins in the same image.
yeah. I mean, there's what I say, multiple ways to skin a cat here, but like I think yeah, Cypher decided to give his answer to that, but I'm not sure that it answers the underlying question. Or maybe do we have discussions we can just push that to? Because it's not really like a actionable issue.
That is a good question.
And it is definitely one of those ongoing discussions.
For me, I was just saying, hey, can you phrase it differently, maybe with an example? Because I'm not quite sure we're all talking the same thing there. And they said, I thought it was obvious. Thought everybody was asking the same thing. So from there, I'm like, that's not it. That wasn't a rephrase. So I can't help you.
I mean, he decided to rephrase it to the question he wanted to answer here, which was about that. So I mean, I think that it is an answer to his question. But yeah, understanding what his initial confusion was. But yeah, I think some of that's just explaining how OCI works today, and that's understandable. It's not the way everybody wants it to work. And I'm very supportive of every project that's trying to improve on it, whether it's Puzzle FS or AeroFS. We should try everything and see what's best.
Yep. No, I give him a thumbs up on Cypher's comment because everything he's saying I'm agreeing with. We're not in conflict there. We want to see something better. It's gonna take work to get there.
I mean, I think there's going to be different ideas around what how some of the stuff should be represented. I'm not quite sure that there can only be one way. There's the way that it works today with tar, and everywhere works, or everywhere supports that. So the basic answer to this question is because that's what everything does. That's why that's why it is the way it is. And I think Cypher already answered for how it got that way. But in terms of what's next, yeah, I really don't think OCI is ready to answer that.
Yeah, I think Cypher and I are back and forth, kind of in fairly close agreement that it'll be nice if this was in the Go standard library, or at least in a non-kernel only tool to implement, because there's some of these file systems that you have to implement it using only the kernel and not any user space tools. Kind of seemed to go off a little bit off the rails there, where they were saying, I don't know why it needs to be Go. Go is a bad solution for everything. And it's just like, you might have got to the wrong room to make that comment.
Yeah. No, it's a
Yeah,
good Rust crowd.
but my English is not good. But from the kernel perspective, the main problem is that if we like to split the files into chunks, and maybe each file have many chunks, but in the kernel, it is hard to handle the paste cache fault. To open this chunk on demand in the page cache fault context, because it is risky.
So, welcome. First off, I didn't even see that you were here. Can you clarify just a little bit, maybe a little bit different on the phrasing here? Because I hear you saying multiple chunks. Can you throw like an example of what you're saying? It doesn't have to be like fully fleshed out, but just a problem that you'll be solving by implementing it. Is this saying you want to take two different images and merge them together?
I'm not sure.
That's not his issue. I mean, that was his response. So
Xiang?
I don't know his original issue either. But I just do some reaction to the puzzle FS. That approach, you just use some split the files into chunks, maybe a lot of chunks for each file. And I just would like to point out the issue out of if we implement in kernel, it could have some issue.
yeah, I mean, I think there's like two different paths here that are kind of relevant. Like one is like say you could take AeroFS today and you could just make that a direct replacement for tar. Everything else could be exactly the same. And maybe that's definitely not the solution that like Cypher is pointing to, but I think AeroFS as a distribution format helps because you can do it in the kernel, but you don't have to. I mean, the idea that like the only way you can handle ArrowFS is by doing it in the kernel. It's like, well, you could also just use it as an alternative to tar as a mechanism for distributing stuff. It just happens to be something you could directly mount and use. The PuzzleFS and some of those, it's kind of breaking the file system completely apart. And I understand from like a build perspective and distribution perspective how that could be good. And there's no reason why they can't do that. But to me, they're almost different use cases. It's like, are you optimizing for the build time or are you optimizing for the runtime? And I think ArrowFS is way more optimized for the runtime because you don't have to reconstruct the whole file system. You can directly use it and you can directly verify it. Whereas in PuzzleFS might be better for some of the build cases and merging of file systems and everything. So to me, they're a little bit separate, but which one should be like distribution format? Like I think we just have to play with it to know. And I don't think that there's back and forth, and I definitely don't think that we're ready to call anything OCI v2. And I feel like we had that discussion a while ago that we should stop calling stuff OCI v2 that's not OCI v2.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty easy to add a new file system type within the same construct. So that's not a v2 to me for this case either. I'm looking at potential user space implementation. So I'm seeing at least somebody has this implemented, but
Who wrote
nobody's
that?
using it.
Who wrote that?
It's under EuroFS, Go EuroFS. So
Yeah, it's
Yeah, but
just
who wrote
a new
it?
library. I mean, but we will working on it.
Ah,
oh, is that why you're asking that question?
yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of the whole idea that ArrowFS can only be used because the utilities are just in C right now is kind of like there's nothing stopping it. It's a new format. It's a good format and has a lot of advantages. So
Is this
it's
entirely written in
early
Go
days.
or is this C Go?
No, this is all Go.
Okay.
This is just it's
Just a runtime. I mean,
yeah, it's
and
just for
handle the
reading today.
yeah, and it just handle the uncompressed format. I mean, but it's just it's still a preliminary library. But I think that is just out of the topic. I think my main idea of this is just it's quite hard to implement PuzzleFS in the kernel reliably. I mean, because just to some potential dialogue, you could just look into my comment in the PuzzleFS. I mean that link in my reply. There are some discussion between some kernel developer to discuss how to handle PuzzleFS. I mean the mainly memory map path in the kernel, but we think it's just risky. So maybe that it could have some fuse version, but it's hard to implement in the kernel as a kernel FS. So maybe it is hard to do the direct mount. I mean, directly to kernel mount.
You say there was an effort to have a file system that directly supports PuzzleFS in the kernel, or
Yeah.
is the comment that the kernel shouldn't do any of that? That was
no. there are some discussion about the risky the risky way to handle path FS. You could click the link. I mean the puzzle FS one. I mean the comment. Yeah. And scroll down. Yeah, there are some chat between me and another Dave Trainer. He's a main developer of XFS. We discuss about that use case. I mean, just handle one file. I mean, several chunk from a single file. That is risky. But that is just talk about that approach, not about a specific file system. I mean the PuzzleFS. That is not a knack of PuzzleFS itself, but just the way to form a file from the chunks. I mean, I have no more idea. So it's just some random words.
I think the question I want to ask to Derek is, why haven't you imported your own package somewhere?
I'm just playing around with it. Just playing with it. See the interface? That's the type of interface I like.
It's the perfect interface. It
Yeah.
leverages exactly what Go needs. You just say, hey, give me this file system using a reader.
We'll see. I mean, it's said it's not fully implemented yet, and it doesn't have the right side. But I think what I was talking to Gao earlier about is like, well, if we wanted to have a Fuse implementation, I mean, you could easily do Fuse on top of it. Like there was some concern around file systems or basically directly running stuff inside the kernel, but you don't have to. It depends on it really depends on how the runtime wants to do it. So
another thing I want to clarify that URFS on disk format can be safely mounted from the unprivileged user in principle, but it's just another policy issue because there are many there are many kernel file systems which are unsafe to do that. But so that from the as a general kernel policy, we are not allow unprivileged user to mount kernel local file system currently. I mean,
For me, the use case of having user space tools for this is less the runtimes and it's more the tools to inspect and build container images. So if I wanted to go through and look at an image, do a conversion, take it from one format to another for the different kind of file system under there, writing that kind of tooling would be nice if I don't have to pull the kernel into that. I can just do that entirely in user space.
yeah, that's why I originally was writing that Go AeroFS was just to have a simple way to walk the file system from Go. But the AeroFS utils are pretty good for that already. So it's like it's good to have it in Go, but like the fact that the AeroFS utils natively has like a tar to AeroFS conversion built into it is pretty good, and we're leveraging that now in Containerd to completely avoid needing to do a mount on pull when you're using AeroFS. So I know like, well, yeah, there's tar to ext4, but it's also Microsoft had their like tar to VHD and stuff. So I mean, I think there's a lot of prior art in doing that. And when you have that, it kind of kneecaps some of the concerns with tar, other than tar just being inefficient and non-standard. But it kind of makes the point of moving away from tar more about, to me, how do you make the runtime faster rather than how do you just represent this thing in a way that I find prettier, or I don't know what the. Yeah, making images faster and more secure. And from my perspective, AeroFS gives us that in two levels. One, by making it really easy to kind of page stuff in lazily, and second, by being able to use DM Verity much more reliably.
including eco implementation. That wasn't written by Derek.
Oh, is that what the tar to VHD does? It uses that tar to ext4 and creates that?
I was looking at the second link here that DM Verity has a Go library implementation.
Yeah. Well, DM Verity is pretty simple. Like it's not yeah, it's not like a super complicated algorithm to implement.
Except the return of Verity info and not an fs.fs. I haven't dug into this too much, so I couldn't say.
I mean, you could easily add a Verity checker on in the Go side as well for when you read at. You could, if you have your Verity info, you could pretty easily verify it. You would just have to read it in larger chunks, which I think you mostly already do anyways, so, with AeroFS. So.
Especially if you're going to try to do this across the wire to a registry, you want to pull in a large enough chunk to make the API call worth it.
Yeah, I mean that's why I said it. I think it fits well with the DM Verity, because if you were basically, you can imagine a lazy load situation where you're lazily pulling in AeroFS. Well, basically, whenever the kernel page is in memory, it's going to check the DM Verity info, and then it can get that. It can get that directly from the registry, as long as the DM Verity info itself is hashed in part of the manifest.
Thanks, Ajay. So, important question here is, do you want to respond to Cypher's comment about not having an out-of-kernel parsing library?
I don't even, what does that even?
I mean, at least UFS has a C parsing library. It doesn't have a Go parsing library. I mean, a major.
Yeah,
it's just
not even saying it has to be
preliminary
major,
one.
but
Yeah.
it exists.
But it's still ongoing. I will put my time on it later as well.
Yeah, I don't even know what does that mean? A parsing library out of kernel, like the AeroFS utils doesn't count as is, or like does he mean like there's no fuse file system for it?
UFS utils also has a fuse implementation.
Oh well,
I'm thinking of utils.
there you go.
It has UFS fuse.
If I was to read this, I'm thinking of utils, something where you don't have to go to the kernel, mount a file system, copy a bunch of contents into there to generate the output, but you can, just like a tar command.
So the AeroFS utils already has that then.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Is that something you want to respond to since you've been involved over there?
I purposely stay out of these discussions, but my philosophy is always it's better to show working code than to go back and forth about what we could potentially do in some future.
I can give you an out and jump to the next topic that Rob and I want to talk about. The silence, I'm going to take that as a yes. And you can chime in on this one. This is a good one to talk about, but I think Rob and I were back and forth on this one. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. On a chunked upload. So we're going back into, like this was a rapid shift here in the topic, so I want to refocus. When you do the patch request on a chunked upload, you send the request, you say, hey, I'm getting ready to do this with this content type. You specify the range within the blob that you're sending right here, and then how many bytes that is in the body, and then the body of that chunk. The registry then gives you back a location that says, here's where you send the next chunk. So FYI, new location, or chunk received, new location to send the next one to. And then it sends a range header of its own, saying 0 to the end of the range. We say the end of the range here is the value of the last uploaded byte. Is that the last uploaded byte of the chunk or the last uploaded byte of the overall blob? Rom, you're being super quiet over there.
What is
Derek is thinking.
what do the registries actually do for this?
So distribution does the overall blob.
Okay.
And Zod is doing the individual chunk.
Dun, dun, dun. All right, got it out. I'm not a maintainer on distribution anymore.
Yeah. I was following distribution when I wrote OlaReg, so I'm doing just the overall blob. Rom, I saw you coming off mute there. You can jump in.
Yeah, this is flame bait right there. Oh, okay, so and that sentence is deliberately incomplete.
That's why I'm raising it here. I'm not shouting, any shade on your direction here. We have a vague sentence and it's not even in the conformance test, apparently.
So
because I
what
ran
is
it and it's not passed.
Yeah, so what is the understanding from the HTTP spec about this?
If you have a link, I'll pull it up.
Let me see. Let me see if I can find it. Because HTTP, I don't think has the concept of a blob, right? Blob is our concept. So, okay, let's see if I can pull this up.
But it does specify a range in the request. So there is the notion of an operating range.
Yeah, the request range is the range within the overall blob that it's sending.
But then why is it 0? Wouldn't it be start to end of range in that case?
Because we always, a chunked upload always starts at the first byte of the blob.
Because we don't allow out of order.
We don't allow out of order, correct.
Okay, so this isn't related to the request to allow out of order.
Correct. In fact, this is going to make anybody who wants to implement it have to figure out how to solve this problem.
Which is a tricky problem.
Mm-hmm. That's why I was staying out of that one. Taking a note from Derek there.
You have the right to remain silent.
I'm looking through the RFC on 5789, which I think defines how patches are done. And it does not go into that detail. Yeah, it's description of changes because a patch is not necessarily a chunk. It's whatever a patch is according to your API. I could see this being like a git diff or something like that.
Yeah, okay, this one I think we need to harden the language here. Let's not leave it out for interpretation.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
completely agree. Like I'm saying, I was not casting any shade at you at all. I wanted to bring it up to the group so that we know that we've got a gap here. And I'm pretty sure if I go looking through the conformance test, I'm going to find that we did not test this very well because you got green lights, I've got green lights. Everybody says we're implementing it. And if two people are doing it differently, then that's not right.
I mean, I think it makes sense to define the range as the range within the blob, and all the indexes are blob reference, not individual request reference.
I agree. I'm biased, but I agree.
And this has not showed up because blob equal to chunk in most cases, I think, so far at least.
So very few people implement the chunked API from the client side.
Hmm.
Very few people do. I'm notorious for finding broken chunked implementations. I would take the entire blame.
I'd
There
be really
is-
surprised if a majority of registries even implemented this.
They've implemented it, but I think we're finding that even the conformance test doesn't test it too well. So I wouldn't be surprised that there are a lot of broken implementations out there. What a lot of people have implemented is the streaming API, which we don't define here, but it is a patch request without any size.
I thought we did have a case in Containerd where if you were to upload, if the stream upload were to get interrupted for some reason and you were to retry it, we would use this. But when you say when we do the patch, is the default, you said it doesn't provide a length or a range, or
The streaming request, I don't even know if we do a length. I know you don't do a range because the streaming request is just, I'm doing a patch. I don't know how much I have to send to you. Take it all. And when I'm done, I'll follow up and let you know what digest I computed and you verify. And that's how Docker has always done their pushes for a long time. I don't know if they've changed since I last looked. It's been a while.
I was going to look at what we do on Containerd, since later versions of Docker will use the Containerd version.
Yeah.
And I know the Containerd version was very lightly used for a long time, except for BuildKit.
And now it's getting a little more use. Yeah, the original Docker, I suspect, was building the layer on the fly from the file system. And so it didn't know the digest, it didn't know how big it was. It just knew I'm going to send you a bunch of stuff, and when my stream gets to the OF, then I'll sort everything out at the end. So that's something that is well supported in a lot of registries. We test that in our conformance test, but we do not define it in our spec. Oops. So Ram, if we clarify this to say that is the last uploaded byte within the entire blob or some similar language, is that going to break anything on your side or you're happy? I know you've got to
No, we'll
change
fix
something.
it. No, it's okay. I mean, things break all the time, so we can fix that. So I would say let's just open an issue on dispec and just at least so that there are more eyes on this. If there are any other objections, people can make them. But specifically from Zod side, no issues. We'll fix it.
Okay.
Does that include adding a conformance test, Brandon?
It does.
I'd be curious. As soon as you add a conformance test, then we'll know who it works for and who it doesn't, right?
Yeah. And we've got a conformance test for the chunked upload somewhere in here. I mean, we've got streamed right at the very beginning. Before anything else, we test the streamed upload, which is hilarious. The one that's not in our spec. Do the monolithic. Now the chunked. Let's see, we do the chunk with a post. We check if it's got that min length there, and so we might have to do a new request for that, I think. First chunk is a 202. Retry, and we try to make sure that gives us back a bad thing in there. We do a get on the location, make sure we get a range on that. This is all within the very first chunk though. And so now the second chunk, we check that, but we do not have a test in there for the range. So we should do a get on the range in there and make sure that range is good. So one line change, and yeah, you're right. We'll see who breaks.
What are you using the range for on the client side other than just a sanity check?
Sanity check, make sure that we're both in sync. Because if the registry tells me, hey, I accepted your chunk, but I only accepted it up to this length, then I go and reset my offsets and start uploading from that point forward.
You have a lot of faith in the registry.
I throw really funny errors when it doesn't work. I had to go dig in and be like, what on earth does this mean? Because no one ever.
I
It's like
don't
a
I don't even
nonsense
know
error.
how you'd go. Well, I guess the assumption there is you start at what the registry last said it uploaded, and then you can continue from there.
Yeah, if the
And
registry says I got up to bytes 1500 and I sent up to byte 2000, I'll reset back to byte 1500 and start from there again. It all works out at the end when I do the digest check, but still, it's one of those things where it's just keeping us both in sync. It's more of an issue of a chunk breaks in mid upload and then after the get request, because the get request thing going to give me a range that I can now reset from wherever the chunk got interrupted in the middle of the push. So yeah, this will be a pretty easy. I mean, we expect the range up here. We just need to put the range on the second chunk. Check it there. And fix this wording here. So I can do an issue and then I can throw the PR on that. That's not too big of a deal. Anything else to chat about today? That was our full agenda. Go back to your container talk if you want to do that. Everything
the
going well over there.
Aerofesta?
You want to talk
That's fine.
Aerofest?
I don't know why Gav Young is still awake. It's like 2 a.m. there.
I will
I
sleep.
was I was thrown off because I saw the X in your name and I thought that was the original person asking the question. So I was like, oh no, you chimed in there, Gal, just after I was criticizing the comment of, Go being a poor standard. And yeah, I have to be careful when I criticize people.
Know that it is a good standard, but it's definitely done us pretty well. So gotten pretty far with it.
I I feel like when you call out Go stupid poor standard lib, you should probably be careful you're not talking to a bunch of people that put a lot of their career behind the Go library.
I mean, I'll say bad stuff about Go, but I'll say it out of love. I can love to hate on Go modules as much as I want.
I have some of my own critiques of them. The one that I posted recently is that I am very frustrated with their 1.0 compatibility promise, because their 1.0 compatibility promise is based off the version in your Go mod file, where they're saying, hey, if you don't update your Go mod version, the version inside your Go mod file, then we're always going to parse your code with this old version of the compiler. And so we can add these new features and your code will still compile. They make that promise and then they require that everybody updates to the latest Go mod version or the latest version of the Go compiler if you have any import that updates their versions. And the Go developers decide they're going to make all their code update to the most latest and greatest, even though they don't have any code changes on their side. They just want to do the new version. So I went off on a little mini rant on that one a while back. But like you say, out of love. Mike, how's it going down there?
No, I was just going to echo your Go min version issue. Oh my God. Really? We all have to be on the latest version of Go now? What? If we have any dependencies? What?
It's frustrating.
Well, I don't understand. It's a
It is very
virus. Go has become a virus.
well. The thing that bugs me is that a lot of the everything under the golang.org/x now just force bumps you to the latest two versions. If you have any dependency over there, you're force bumped. And that just frustrated me. I'm like, if the Go developers hadn't made that decision, if they're going to force bump everything, then we could have
Would-
at least had logical discussions around this of saying, okay, now I'm going
To be fair, it wouldn't be bad if they would, at least test the versions of Go before they shipped them.
Now, I don't know if that sentence was made out of love there, but
I'm just saying. Wait, what?
there's an RC out you can test. They want you to test. They don't want to test.
Right. So they released the version and then everybody has to upgrade, whether they want, which is really forcing the release candidate testing. Yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Whoops. And oh, by the way, your license is out and we're not going to support fixing the older version that you tried to stay on. Yeah, so no choice. Apparently, somebody's building a container stack on Swift.
Not Rust? I'm sure someone's doing it on Rust.
Yeah, all the above.
Yeah. All right. Well, we ran the hour out. With just a handful of topics there. Thanks everybody for joining in. Mike, I hope you're staying dry down there.
You should see my river. It did get bad. We're okay though.
Yeah.
I'm at the 500-year level and above actually, where my house is, but I have got a creek that overflowed pretty bad. Right. Not as bad as it was a few years back when we had cows and houses floating down the river. It was basically, we have I-35 is the main road, To the left side, it's called hill country. It's a and then on the right, we've got farmlands. It's just a plain. It's a subside zone. And when it rains, the plains are fine, but in the hills, it goes crazy. The creeks go nuts. Yeah.
Well,
Corps of
glad-
Engineers
glad to
did a
hear your
good
drive
job
today.
in some of our cities, but not all of our cities have good runoff checks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Glad to hear your drive today, at least. And hopefully that 500 years doesn't hit anytime soon.
Yeah, that will be all right. It's horrible what happened though. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody knows somebody who got killed. It's going to end up being a few hundred. Yeah. Not good. Not good.
No, not good.
All right.
All right, folks.
See
Thanks
you
for
guys.
joining. We'll be back for another round of this next week. Have a good one.
All
Take
right.
care.